Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
All right. Hello, Margaret. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yes. So I'd like to welcome Margaret O'Reilly to the Eventful Endeavors podcast. Margaret created Simply Suited after she studied hospitality business at Michigan State University and spent 7 years in the event planning world. During that time, she always had a desire to create her own company that was built on passion for events and helping clients navigate the details and logistics of planning. Simply Suited is the realization of that dream. Margaret's commitment to fighting for her clients to ensure the best experience forms the foundation of her company. Her unique ideas and high expectations led to the creation of Simply Suited, where innovative solutions ensure every detail is covered. So do you strictly focus on weddings or do you plan other events as well, Margaret?
A lot of my career, my professional career before Simply Suited was a lot of focus on corporate. I started in weddings, always had an itch and people reaching out about weddings. So now with Simply Suited, I really do focus more on weddings and then nonprofit events as well.
Okay, very cool. Sounds good. What made you kind of steer more toward the weddings?
I would say just at the age I'm at, a lot of friends of friends were reaching out, and I just felt like it was a natural progression
Yeah,
of being able to take on weddings, as well as there's just something that is so special about being able to take the relief away from somebody on their wedding day versus
yeah.
corporate is great, but if something goes wrong, they're kind of like, well, what's the solution? I'm fine.
Sure, sure. Definitely a good feeling to be able to help with people like that. And takes a special person to be able to do that too. That's kind of cool though. Yeah, definitely at our age, we have kind of that built-in network almost, right? So that was nice to probably build your experience a bit, right?
Exactly.
Nice. So where are you based out of? Do you travel to other events? Kind of what's your scope?
Yeah. So I am based out of Dubuque, Iowa, and Galena, Illinois. That's
Nice.
really the area that I live within, but then I travel pretty much throughout Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So I have kind of moved throughout. Obviously, you mentioned Michigan State, so that's where I was born and raised. I grew up in Michigan,
Oh, nice.
so I have a lot of friends and friends of friends that have wanted to have my services, so I'll make a trip back as well for Michigan.
Absolutely. Very nice. Do you do any like destination weddings?
Yeah, so I just got back from South Carolina.
Oh,
So I did
fun.
a vacation there and it was beautiful. South Carolina, Charleston specifically is
Oh,
just a cute little town to have a destination wedding in.
absolutely. What's your favorite place that you've had a destination wedding at that you've been a part of?
I would say in terms of the events that I've done, I would definitely say Charleston, just because there's something about that Southern charm,
Totally.
as well as just like the weather was perfect and it was all centrally located, like right downtown Charleston. So it was just a really nice experience. And then people made it a longer trip where they went to the
Oh,
beach and
sure.
got an Airbnb to have a beach house. And so I think it was
That's so
just
much fun.
really yeah, I think it was really just a mix of the having a wedding, but then also making it a vacation.
Absolutely. Lots of things to do. Very historic community, I've heard. I've never been there, but it's definitely top on my list. So maybe I'll get
You
married there someday.
know,
So you mentioned fighting for your clients. So those words really stuck out to me. I wanted to talk more, have you tell me a little bit more about like the importance of fighting for your clients.
yeah. So I would say that something that naturally happens within the wedding industry is that most of the customers and clients that we're working with have never planned an event, let alone an
Sure.
event of this size. And so I think there's a lot of unsolicited opinions that come from all spectrums, right? They
Hmm.
have from family, friends, unsolicited opinions there, as well as sometimes, with good intention, but I think vendors also can can really put their own opinion or saying, no, you need to do it this way. And for
Very
somebody
true.
that's never planned in a certain way or planned this type of event, it can be very overwhelming. And so that's where I like to step in and really say, like, no, this is what you want. This is how you want your event. You don't have to do what Aunt Susie said has to be done,
Right.
or just making them feel like really it is your wedding day, and it's what you deserve to have and what you want and how you want it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unless people are paying for it, they don't have an opinion, right? That's what I always say. I've always
Exactly.
said there's so much like politics in wedding planning too, which it really should not be that way.
No, and and I can understand why, because there's so many different avenues and it's a big event and all that. But yeah, it's easier said than done to say, well, I don't need to listen to you, especially I've had the pleasure of working with some really nice people, really good people, and those are the people that are really like having a hard time saying, I don't
Hmm.
need to listen to
Oh
you.
gosh, yeah. I bet.
So
They need you as their advocate for sure. And that can be super stressful at times. So, how do you ensure that the bride and groom stay stress free leading up to and on the wedding day?
yeah. So, depending on the level of services that I'm stepping in, for my even my coordination package, I'm usually stepping in about 3 months before, and really I designed it that way for the fact of being able to relieve stress. Because the closer you get to the wedding, the more stressful it gets, of course. And so making sure that I keep a pulse on where they're at in their planning journey. So we'll have an introduction call right after we book, then we'll do a timeline call, which is where we build out the timeline. And that's typically going to be around that 3 month mark. It sometimes is earlier, sometimes later, just depending on how everything's progressing. And then we do a 30 days and a 2 week. And those are really to keep the pulse point to making
Yeah.
sure that they're not overwhelmed and they're not stressed. And I step in and I help and make sure, okay, have you thought about this? Do you have this task? What about this? So it really keeping them on pace and organized with all the tasks that happen.
Right. Yeah. I feel like we need you for, the things that you don't even think about because you're going to be the one that thinks about it. Right.
Exactly. Well, and why should that? Why should a
Very
couple
true.
because of the fact that you've never done it before. So when you're trying to do anything for the first time, you're never gonna be 100% knowing everything.
Hmm. Yep. Agreed. For sure. Now, so how do you handle like unexpected challenges, last minute changes during an event?
Yeah. Realistically, I think this is more experience, right? It comes with time of being able to know and manage that challenges are going to happen, and
Hmm.
you only plan so much, and then essentially have a calm head when those challenges arise, and making sure that you can make the best decision. Another reason why I like to step in so early is so I really can get to know the couple, because
Yeah.
I'm very transparent with them to say that on your wedding day, I want to make sure that I am your advocate and I'm able to make decisions without bothering you, right?
Totally.
So that's where it's like they're busy getting ready, they're very busy enjoying their time with their family and friends, and they're just excited for the day. And so that's where it's like I really try to make it feel like I can make a decision based on them. Obviously, of course, if there's big decisions, I make sure that they're
Yes.
involved.
Yes.
Uh, but that's really what I like to do, is to make sure that I can kind of advocate on that way
Yeah.
with to bother them every single question.
Well, and I think that's so important so it doesn't just feel like a transaction or a job, right? Like you truly are there to help them and be their, right-hand man or, whatever way you want to put it, right?
Well, and that's the thing. I think sometimes too it can get lost on the importance of the role.
Hmm.
This is somebody's biggest day of their life, right? It's also the most expensive and stressful day of their life.
Yep.
But up until that point, most likely. And so that's where I don't take that lightly. I want to make sure that with each couple that I'm working with, that it's very apparent that that is forefront, and
Yeah.
making sure that it's not. just like brushed off to the side, like, oh, another wedding, another
Right.
couple.
Totally. Yep. And they're your number one focus for the day,
Hmm.
for sure. So day of, I feel like, in this day and age, couples are really trying to stand out, getting these content creators, things like that, especially on social media. So I just wanted to see what kind of like current trends that you're seeing and liking in the industry right now.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it's necessarily specific trends. I think the ones that I really like are really unique to the couple.
Oh,
One
sure.
that I think is really cool that I really like to see is like thank you cards that are handwritten or personal pictures that are given to the guests the day of.
Yeah.
And so, incorporating that in with your seating chart, um, I think that's a really nice touch for the
Yeah.
guest, right? It's a big day. There's a lot going on. You definitely don't get to talk to everybody that you want to,
Ah,
but they still took the time to travel, to, come from wherever.
right.
And having that little sentimental piece to me is really cool. I really like that.
Hmm.
As well as just it's kind of having a wow. So I know sometimes there's like the painters, like the live
Oh,
painters that
yeah.
will either do like couples or just like a scene of the wedding,
Hmm.
unique entertainment, obviously, like
Yeah.
having right, like dueling pianos.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be the same old deal every time you go to a wedding.
Right. I'm loving the kind of like non-traditional things. I feel like it's much more memorable too.
Yeah.
Not that you need everybody to remember your wedding, but it's great to give other people ideas and whatnot as well. Now, so when you work with couples, do you like recommend these ideas to them, or how do you ensure that, they incorporate some unique and special things in their day?
Yeah, and I would say that it's a really a gauge based off of the couple if they're interested. Depending on the stage I come in planning, I really like to listen to what they're looking for and ask the right questions, make sure I'm fully understanding their vision.
Yeah.
And that way it's like, okay, if I hear that a couple's like, I really want to make sure we have great entertainment, we have music throughout, something like that, that's when we can look at, okay, well, what does that mean for you? Do you, want a saxophone player taking people from one part of the wedding to the next? Or do you want, do you just want like really good food and you kind of have a different culinary experience?
Yeah.
Maybe that's incorporating food trucks, non-traditional, or things like that. So really listening to their top most important items and then spinning that and giving my recommendation based off that, because you can recommend so many different aspects, right? And then it becomes
Hmm.
overwhelming because it's like, well, which one am I supposed to
Very
choose?
true.
And what's staying within my budget, right? Not
Yep.
like
Also that.
overboard and just saying, yeah, let's do it all. And then, whoa,
Yeah.
we
Yes.
can't.
Listening is very important for sure. And it makes, each couple different too. You can't be recommending the same thing. It's not cut and paste, right?
Exactly. That's my approach, at least, is a very tailored and customized based off of who I'm working with.
Very nice. Now, how do you incorporate like a couple's personal story into their wedding?
So that is where typically at the beginning of working with them, sort of in the introduction, I really try to ask questions about like who are you having involved in your wedding party? Who are your family members, your VIPs? How did you meet? Things like that, just to really get an understanding of who they are. Really, I found that as a planner, coordinator, whoever on that day of, that's when you really see a different side of people that maybe people don't ever really get to see. So I want to, and not just the couple, it's also the family. So just really making sure that I'm understanding the role that all the couple has with each other and the story that they have, and then trying to incorporate, delicate pieces such as maybe
Nice.
there's a dog involved and wanting to have the
Yeah.
dog on the, seating chart, or maybe there's a love of a hobby that they have and maybe incorporating pieces like that. I've had where people will do like custom, like their family was very Italian, so they would want to do like their own wine, so their families like
Oh,
made
yeah.
that was like a gift, a favor. So pieces and aspects like that is really just because at the end of the day, that's what's really important. It's an event of your love
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
bringing two families together. So
Mm-hmm.
taking those pieces and incorporating them so subtly or as loud as you want into the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I mean, it makes total sense. I've never kind of heard it, said that way out. So, but that's awesome. Love that. And that's why also, important to have planners to be able to help them do these things and create these ideas as well. Um,
Yeah,
now
I think
kind of a little, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I
No, you're
think it's a
fine.
little bit of a confidence thing as well. Of if you don't have the confidence to be like, I have this crazy idea, eh,
Yeah,
it helps having a professional to kind of boot you, be like, yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
sure. We bounce things off. Yeah, it's possible or not possible.
That's a little outside of the
Yeah.
realm of weddings.
Right. Okay, so what trends are you not loving right now? It's not finding cringe trends right now.
So I would say anything that's really like unrealistic, that really seems very for the Instagram photo,
Yeah,
like a champagne tower. There's the cutest photos, don't get me wrong. But when you think about it, it's like, okay, so I'm doing a champagne toast and then the glasses are all sticky, and then
so
are we
true.
drinking the champagne, or like are you actually handing out the champagne to guests for a champagne toast like normal or traditional? um that, and then things such as like exits, sparkler exits, I don't
Sure.
love either. Just again, they're great photos, but how often do you have a photographer that's there until 11 p.m. at
So
night?
true. Yeah.
And so if you don't have a photographer that's there until 11 p.m. at night, that means that you
Mhm.
need a sparkler exit earlier. And then are you having an exit when it's not actually an
Go
exit?
back.
Yeah.
Party more, right? Or just a
Yeah,
bunch of like not great cell phone footage, right? That
exactly. And so, and again, they're cute, but it's just I think when things are like
yeah,
logistically not making sense, that's where I'm like, I don't like that trend. It doesn't
you're
make
trying a little too hard or something, right? Um, have you ever seen like a champagne tower fall? I feel like those are so risky.
right. No, I have not, but
That's
that like
good.
every time you're just like,
Knock
because
on wood.
like it's all set up. So like let's say
Right.
somebody, like there was one where the like groom of the sister was like, hopefully I don't knock it over.
God, I had a few too many mimosas already.
Yeah, like please
Right?
don't even joke. I don't want to think about it.
Not funny.
No.
All right. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about you specifically. Tell me a bit more about your planning process from start to finish.
Yeah, for with couples, right?
Yeah.
So, again, it kind of depends on where I step in. But we'll just use a coordination package, for example. Once a couple books with me and agrees to go and move forward, we will do an introduction call, and that's really just to get the nitty gritty, get to understanding how many, like, what vendors do you already have? What vendors do you still need? Is there any recommendations I can provide? Just to get a lay of the land, any, just tips on what to do, how to navigate communication, because sometimes that can get a little tricky. Just trying to be there as a resource, and then really hands off. So let's say they hire me a year before their wedding, hands off from that moment, and then we'll do a timeline conversation, and that's really where we get into the full details of who is going to have the rings, or where are you getting ready, or how long is it going to take from the ceremony to the reception, and is there going to be traffic, things like that. That's where we
Yeah.
really go through that timeline and really nail everything down so they have a good understanding to tell their photographer, to tell their DJ or their musicians, venue, all of that. And then from there, we'll kind of just be in communication. If they have any questions, I'm always available. But then turning around at that 30 days, probably more like 6 weeks before,
Yeah.
and starting to do the reach out with the vendors before the vendors start reaching out to them, right?
Yep. Totally.
And because it's always about that 30-day mark was when it's like
Hmm.
everything
All
for rent.
right. Everything's due, all the final deposits,
Yeah,
all of
exactly.
it for sure.
So then we'll do the 30-day conversation, and making sure that we're in a good spot. Their RSVPs are starting to roll in, making sure everything's good with that. And then once we do the final numbers and everything, we'll do a 2-week conversation just to make sure no changes have happened.
Okay.
Because there most likely is going to be something that's changed,
Absolutely.
or something that still needs to be figured out. So have that conversation. Then on the weekend of, I'll step in and I'll do the rehearsal. To most of the time I run it, but if there is an officiant or a priest or somebody that is very comfortable or very used to and
Yeah.
likes doing it, I let them run with it, but I'm still there and available for questions.
Yeah.
And then on the wedding day, whenever I start, whatever time it makes sense for me to start, I usually come in around 9, 10 o'clock, and then
Hmm.
I'll stay the whole day. I don't like to really leave until you start tearing things down, make sure all the
Wow.
pieces that need to go where they need to go, and because I think that that's a big piece of just making sure that the things are organized even to the last
Right.
minute.
Start to finish. There's so many things to think about. It's wild. Oh
Well,
my
I
goodness.
mean, because that at that point, I feel like once the dance floor starts happening and maybe the photographer leaves, that's when you start getting a little bit more comfortable and you're just
Hmm.
really focusing on celebrating. And so there's nothing worse than, maybe having a drink or two at the end of the evening, and then you have to figure out like, well, wait, where is all this supposed to go? It's just
Absolutely. Packing up cars, like that stinks. Yeah.
I know when I've done events like for other organizations and I'm in charge of setup and tear down, it's never a fun task.
Right.
That's the last thing I would want to be doing at the
Yep.
last moment of my wedding.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned some packages. Do you want to go into a little bit of detail about your packages?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have everything from full planning all the way to coordination. So it's basically full planning, partial planning, and coordination, as well as I offer virtual services such as
Oh,
like
cool.
maybe you don't need somebody at the wedding because you have somebody that's super organized and a coworker that you trust with your life, or somebody that is a project manager in real life maybe.
Sure.
um and that you just really need a checklist and somebody to keep you organized. So I also have those virtual services too. So my packages for the on-site with me being at the wedding and everything start at 2000 with the coordination and go on up to there from there. And then my virtual services are really it's $500, and we go through, and like I said, we have a monthly meeting and kind of touch base from there just to build everything for you and then hand it off
Yeah.
to whoever you determine, because as much as I obviously value what I do and I think that it's so important to have somebody a professional day
Yes.
of, it's just not
Agreed.
it's for everyone. It's
Sure.
not everyone's budget. So um accounting for that and understanding that and just giving another solution to help you stay on top of everything.
That's nice. Love that. But I
Mm.
firmly agree that you I think are one of the most important vendors that people can hire. Kind of I guess going off that then, what advice and tips can you offer couples starting their planning journey? Like what are the important questions to ask, the essential things that you see couples forgetting?
Yeah. So this obviously I could go on a whole lengthy conversation about this, but I think if we're gonna narrow it down and focus in on a few things, I would say number one, most critical is get another email, build a wedding email.
Oh,
So
yes.
you stay organized because you're going to get bogged down in your personal emails and
Yep.
it just becomes overwhelming. So
Such a good
that is
idea.
number one. I always tell people separate email, do it. Don't even think twice about it.
Yep.
And then take a moment, just be with each other, you and your fiance, and figure out what's important. What do you really want? What do before you get too much into the noise and opinions, sitting down and making sure that you understand where you're going so that when you're on the same page with each other, when it comes to harder decisions, you can go back to what is really important. I really care about the entertainment of the evening. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe you're going to splurge a little bit more on that than
Right.
another vendor.
Right.
Things like that. So email, understanding like what's really important and then figuring out a budget because there really is nothing that you can do else in planning unless you have those key pieces, I believe.
Absolutely. 100%. And whatever your budget is probably going to be completely different than what
Yeah.
the real world is, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the last couple of years, it's also changed so much too. So
Right.
that's another thing for couples to have to navigate as well.
Yeah. Well, that's why also it's important to have somebody like you because you're staying up on the trends and the changes, that's your job. And so people then know what to expect because you're up with all of it, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned, are you currently planning your own wedding or you are married?
So I am currently in the process of planning my own wedding.
What?
Um,
Congratulations.
thank
What
you.
is that like?
It is a lot harder than I thought, but not
That's
to
so
the fact
funny.
of like hard like how I would say like most of my friends have explained to me of like how it's hard. It's actually
Okay.
hard to like narrow down what I want to do.
Oh my
Right?
God, I bet. You have so many
Because
resources.
yeah, because you see so much. You like
Right.
I know what I don't want, but there's still been so many things that I'm like this is so cool. I would love this. And then it's like okay, we need to like reel it in. Like we can't go too crazy.
Right?
Um so yeah, that's where it was really hard to lock in a location for us because I always knew we were never going to get married like where we currently live.
Okay.
Um because my fiance is from so right where we live actually is where Illinois, Wisconsin and Iowa meet.
Right.
So we met on the Illinois side, which is Galena, Illinois.
Nice.
Um, we live on the Iowa side in Dubuque, and then he's from a small town on the Wisconsin side.
Okay.
So, so working in the area, I kind and just kind of wanting to like have a central location for everyone. We kind of always knew we weren't gonna get married here.
Mm-hmm.
But the hardest part was figuring out where we were going to get
Where?
married.
Yeah.
So we love Chicago. We spend so much time in Chicago, but
Okay.
obviously, there's
That's a
there's
little
a lot going
pricier.
on in yeah, it's a little pricier in
It's
Chicago,
different.
and we really did not want to cut our guest list.
Yeah.
But we still were spending a lot of time. It was a serious consideration for us because we love that city so much.
Yeah.
Um, but also with our friends and where they're from and our family and being from smaller areas and smaller towns, we also felt that it really would just not be a comfortable guest experience either being
Mm-hmm.
in the city dealing with the
Mm-hmm.
and especially if you're not used to it, not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So those were just some aspects that we really kind of were weighing, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But we settled on Lake Geneva, so we're actually going to be getting married in Lake
Ooh,
Geneva, Wisconsin. Yeah. Um,
beautiful.
yeah, and it'll be in June next year, so it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be great. And I think once we got the location that we both, it was also very important for me to have his say, because I can obviously come in and take over really easily. But I was very aware and conscious of making sure that what we picked was going to be for both of us, and we both really wanted it.
Yeah.
And the venue that we picked is a place that we both were very like, this is it. Like as
That
soon
is
as we
good.
from the meeting, we were like, this is it. So made it easier.
That's good. Yeah, I bet I bet you have, a lot of opinions and wants and stuff, but yep, there's two of you in the relationship, I guess.
Exactly. It is not Margaret's wedding.
Yeah. I guess. Um,
No, he is not a planner either, so that
right.
also kind of helps.
He probably knows, yeah, that you can pick this one.
So he planned our engagement and he did such a good job, but it poor guy was just so stressed. He was like, he's like, this is the best day of my life, but this is also
Right.
the worst day of my life. I
He's
do
not
not
meant
like
to do it.
yeah.
He probably has a little bit more respect for you now, right?
Yeah, yeah, he was just like, I don't get it.
Right? That's it for me. Just the engagement.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So you mentioned like your friends finding certain aspects of the wedding planning process as hard. What were those? Like, I know you kind of mentioned what was hard for you, but then what do you find that your friends are having a hard time with?
Yeah. I would say that just not knowing like what the steps are, right?
Hmm.
Uh, not really understanding what do I need to do? What's the next step? Okay, I did this, but now what do I do here?
Yeah.
And then not having the full scope of everything that actually entails. Eventually, I think that there just becomes like kind of like a decision paralysis almost, where you're just so sick of making decisions and you're like, when is this ever gonna stop? And am I gonna stop spending money ever? Or like, is
Right.
this just like endless at this
Right.
point?
Right. Yeah. And
So
just
I
like the
think a little bit of
unfamiliar.
all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Yep. I could see that for sure. Just, yeah, being unfamiliar with the territories. Oh, cool. Thanks for going into a little bit more detail about that. So let's
Yeah.
chat a little bit more about social media. So first off, I wanted to mention too that you are offering, for being on the podcast today, you're offering 20% off all digital products. So what does that exactly entail?
Yeah, so something that I recently, it's actually been in the works for probably about 2 years. I've been working on a template. But I think since I've gotten engaged, I had a whole different perspective and I was kind of waiting for that to really become the bride. I can do all the planning and have all of that perspective in my head. But until I became a bride, I wanted to make sure that I had all the pieces that I needed in this template. So that's where I started. I plan to elaborate on digital products again, kind of going back to the aspect of it is very important to have a planner, but sometimes it's just not in everybody's budget. So trying to build resources that are helpful that can lead you through the planning process just by following along. So the digital product that I have right now currently launched is exactly that. It's a 15 tab Google Sheet template that has
Nice.
your budgeting, is one of the main pieces, your guest contact and guest management. So there's a tab in there that helps you build your guest list. So I know a lot of tabs that or templates that I've seen, they just have the contact information and maybe a little bit of RSVP tracking.
Yeah.
But I took it to the step before that and but figuring out who are you gonna invite because every single couple I've ever worked with always says, "Oh well, I'm gonna invite 400 people," and then they start seeing prices and
Yep.
all the
Gotta
details, or
edit that
who has a
down.
limitation. Then you gotta cut the guest list down. So that's one of the tabs. And then another main piece is the checklist. So just helping people go through that. So yeah, that's
That's
kind of
awesome.
something else, just to add
Yeah.
resources.
And that'll be offered like separately from your services. So people could even just, buy that and or do both and hire you and do that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and the code is Felix Fingers 20 for anybody who wants to get that. But yes, that's where it's separate. You don't have to hire me. You can just buy that product, but just knowing that it comes from somebody with industry experience as a bride herself.
That's awesome. Very nice and all concise and in one document. Now, so is this separate from your new social media strategy that you were telling me about?
Yeah, so that is so previously, I have to be honest, social media, I love it, but I also hate it, right? Like
But it's so necessary. It's
it's so
difficult though.
necessary. So
Right.
I recently hired a brand strategist, and she kind of basically recommended, she was like, just get rid of, archive your old stuff. So and kind of to piggyback off the digital resources, I just wanted to kind of provide resources, right? You always see the wedding TikToks and all that, and there's great resources that way.
Right.
Um, but so I wanted to just provide knowledge and information, because it really does upset me or like hurts my heart when I do talk to people and they're like, "Oh, this just sucks." Like,
It
you
shouldn't
know,
you shouldn't feel that way.
yeah, like how sad is that? It's supposed to be like the happiest
Right?
time, and the stress of it can get very overwhelming. So just trying to provide an avenue and insights with my social media, and providing those resources.
Cool. Well, I love that. So then to end things, how can clients find you? How do
Yeah,
they reach out?
my website is simplysuitedplanning.com. And then all of my handles, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, even YouTube, all at Simply Suited Planning.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for hopping on, Margaret.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.